It's time to let go. Release the burdens brought on by life when you simply want to be free. You're a blinding beam of light, and you deserve to be free. You're always welcome here. It's time to be quite honest.
Good afternoon. Welcome to our podcast, our very first podcast.
Well, Sarah, I'm glad you're here.
Well, David Drapela, I'm glad you're here. And I hope that in the efforts of our exchanges today, that it's fun, it's informative, but more important, it's heartfelt. And so I want to start this whole wonderful opportunity for our first podcast to quote something you wrote. Life is a miracle. Our understanding of our experience is often limited. But in nature and in ourselves, we can find the answer. And so when I take a look at A Quiet Place, being an online community, a spiritual community for people to join in on, we want it to be global. And a place to discover your work, David, your music, your writing, your videos, the workings of your heart. And so today, some of the things I want you and I to do is talk about your learnings of God from your childhood. What did that look like? You know, some of your experiences as an entertainer in Vegas. The trauma of suicide and the gifts you got from that. Your boat journey for 8.5 years around the world and all the people you met. You had a near-death experience in 2010, and I really want to address that. I want to talk about that. And truly where you come from as to the understanding of your heart and how that transforms fear into love. Not just for you, but for all of us. I hope that the general public will go online to aquietplace.net to subscribe to your writings, to your music, and to the future expansion of bringing the kinds of individuals into the fold to share our stories, our wisdom, and to build a stronger spiritual community. I'm Sarah Bush, and I'm a new member of A Quiet Place. And I'm here with David Drapela, and we're going to talk about the power of the heart. So having said that, knowing that we're sitting here...
Man, you said a lot, girl.
I know, but you know, the bottom line is people need to know who David Drapela is.
Well,
and I learn every time I'm
still trying
with
to
you.
find that out. How are they going to find it out?
Well,
I'm 82 and I'm still looking for me.
So if you were to describe yourself in a few sentences, what would you say?
Crazy man.
I like that, but give me more than that.
Oh. How do you take 82 years and describe it in a few words? You tell me that, Sarah.
Loving, passionate, funny, fun, caring. You don't look 82, you look 60.
Mwah. You sweet thing.
I know. But more importantly, you are gifted on a level from the heart that I haven't seen in a long time in people, especially men. More from the heart than the head.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so for me, looking at you is seeing somebody that's transparent and real. And for that, I honor you.
Thank you, Sarah.
And I honor your friendship.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's talk for a second on A Quiet Place. Talk to me about what you feel is the vision of The Quiet Place.
I think the vision of The Quiet Place is within the name. All of the people who watch this podcast, or all of the people who might hear me, The Quiet Place is about finding the quiet place inside of each one of us. not the quiet place in me. What can I do to help you find the quiet place inside of you? Because only in the quietness can you see your way clear.
Okay, but where did the quiet place come from? Where did the name come from?
Well,
Did you not have a boat?
I did. I had a boat, and I was gifted with being able to be on that boat. And the name of that boat was A Quiet Place. And I traveled the ocean for 8.5 years. And the quiet place came about, I think, many years ago. Because it's in the quietness that I was able to hear the writings, what I've done. I didn't hear that in the middle of traffic. I heard it when I was quiet. And I learned that this quiet place is an incredible place to be, to find out all the different facets of who you are. And so I think since I was a small boy, I was always in the quiet place. I go back and think about my mother. When I was 4 years old, she would say to me, "You live in a different world, David, and you go away, and sometimes you come back and you visit with me, and I'm always happy to see you. Where do you go?" When you're 4 and 5, you know, you couldn't tell her. I could tell her now where I went, but I told her a couple of times, but she took me to the neurosurgeon and had my head examined. So, you know, I'm 7 years old, and I know my mother's fearful because they're going to put me in a pulley wagon, you know. I mean, because this kid's not a normal kid. Something's wrong with him. So I found the quiet place there.
But is that quiet place that you were in nothing more than just not wanting all the noise? Was it a place where you just weren't comfortable, or was it a place where you truly found a spiritual connection on some level?
Oh my God, it's a spiritual connection on another level.
Okay. So
Wow.
So for listeners to understand the distinction, what I'm trying to do is decide if they're looking at the fact that, oh, your mom may have not known about autism, but were you autistic back then? No, you just were at a place where you found more peace within in being quiet than you did in actually interacting at 4 or 5.
Right.
Is that a better example of that?
That's a great example of it, because I go now, as I'm older, I go back and I look and think that this guy called Jesus, he was really a smart guy, you know, man. He said, "Be in this world, but not of it." So when I look back on my life, I'm going, yeah, I know that other place. I like it over there. In fact, I wonder, Jesus, why did I have to come back, you know? So, and to understand that quiet place is in each one of us. If we look for it, if we try to find it, this is it, you know. So the quiet place, I hope that we get people to correspond with us, to tell us what they would like. What can we help them? How can we help them find the quiet place inside of their own self? Not this quiet place. This is just a name. The real quiet place is in you, Sarah, and it's in every one of you that listen to this podcast. Let's find it. What can I do to help you?
Well, I think that in today's time, there's so many people out there that are talking very much the same language, whether it's mindfulness, whether it's a multitude of other speakers. But in my own research of who David Drapela is, I looked at the fact that back 60 or 70 years ago, or even 75 years ago, people like Eckhart Tolle or Wayne Dyer or even Alan Watts, who's older than you, or Deepak Chopra, were formulating so many of the same writings, visions, feelings, which so much of what was written back then is now real. It's now being expressed on a whole nother level, where I don't believe the consciousness back even 20 years ago existed to where we could have the kind of open, transparent, emotional feeling, fear, anger, disappointment that we can now.
No question about it, Sarah. No question about it. There is no question. And for me, I'm thrilled that there's so many spiritual things going on and all these programs and everybody who's smart and everybody who's trying to lead everybody, and I'm thankful for that, because I see our consciousness coming to another point. For me, people ask me, well, there's 1,000 people like you. I said, no, there's only one of me.
That's right.
There's only one of me. But they're competition to you. I said, I'm 82. I have never had competition in my life. The only competitor I have ever competed with was my own self. The more people are out there trying to reach where we're trying to go, the happier I am. If 2 people see this podcast and they profit by it, we did a good job.
Yeah.
I did a good job on that too, man.
Well, I think that for me, in everything I've learned in all my tools in my tool chest, is understanding that, yes, there are other people like the kinds of conversations we're having, but there's not any one of those other people that are like you or like me.
Right.
It's exactly what you're saying.
Right.
So talk to me for a minute about how this all got started 60 or 70 years ago. Did you start writing back then, or?
The quiet place that I would go to as a young boy at 4 and 5, I think a lot of it started with my mother, who was from Germany, and she was quite religious. And, of course, when I didn't attend church or something, that she would tell me, that I was going to be punished, and that the devil was going to take hold of me. And of course, I had this other space that I would go to, and they would teach me. And then I would say to her, no, God don't punish nobody. We punish our own self, Mom. So I think it started back then, 4 and 5 years old, having this other space that I was able to go to. And what I've learned in my life is that you don't know you're learning, I don't think, until you get older, and then you look back and you say, oh my God, did I really do that? Did I really learn that? Was that really me? As I accomplish that? We tend to be like a fish in the ocean. The little fish goes up to the big fish. He says to the big fish, big fish, big fish. I've been in the ocean 20 years. Can you tell me where it's at? So we are in this ocean. We are in this ocean. I was able to move away from all of that in my mind and in my spirit. And so the quiet place there, I think I started writing well, it's interesting. I mean, I started writing many years ago. I was married, and my wife, I was married for 20 years, and my wife would say to me sometimes, "What are you doing sitting on the floor writing, David?" I said, "I've got a message. I'm getting a message." And so, my wife said to me, after 15 years of marriage, one of the things she said to me, she said, "David, I've been married to you 15 years. I don't think I know anything about you. What are you doing on the floor?" I said, "I'm getting a message." "What kind of message?" I said, "I don't know what kind of message. I'm just writing it."
Did she read them? Or did you share them? Let me ask you that.
I very, very much tried to share my life with my wife for 20 years. The spiritual aspect of my wife for 20 years. You can't be married to somebody and not try and share all of that.
That's right.
That's a whole nother story that we can get into, Sarah,
Right.
So the writings now, so far, I think we've scanned 2,500 of them, and we probably have another 1,500 to scan. I read some of the writings. I don't know where they came from. How's that? I learned that you and I and all of us are instruments of the divine. We are not separate. And if you feel these, and people who listen to this podcast, there are a lot of them out there who understand this. They understand this connection. We're not by ourselves. And those of you who believe that you're by yourself, God, I pray for all of you because you are not alone. This is an incredible world that we live in, and the quietness that's inside of you can find where you belong and where you don't belong, So the writings, I bring them out after all these years for the simple reason that when I had the near-death experience, I had a choice. I had a choice, Sarah. You can stay, David, or you can go back. And it was an interesting day in my life. I've written a story about it called "I See You Again." I said, listen, let me go back, and I promise you I will dedicate my life to taking all of the writings that aren't mine. I don't know whether y'all guys gave them to me or not, but they're not mine. Let me go back. And if I can take these writings, turn some of them into videos that people can see and people can feel, if I can make a difference in one person's life, then I would have had a meaningful purpose for being on this planet. Let me go back and do that. They said, it's okay, David. In case you change your mind, if you go to sleep, we'll come and get you in 30 to 45 minutes, and you will have the most peaceful death any human being can have. And I said, well, thank you for giving me the second choice. And that's what these writings are about. I came back to do this. Will they help anybody? I don't know.
So how did the writings transition into music? Or did they transition? Was it just another aspect of David Drapela?
It's another aspect of
Okay.
David Drapela.
And was that what you were doing in Vegas?
Yeah. I only had a job once in my life, and that was with the Navy for 4 years. When I got out of the Navy, I started singing when I was 6 years old. And when I got out of the Navy, well, before I went in the Navy, I was singing all around. I had a group and everything. You know, I wanted to be a star just like everybody else. I thought, I want to be a star. So I got out of the Navy, and I had $13 in my pocket, and I hitchhiked to Las Vegas. I remember the first guy who picked me up said, "Man, it looked like you're moving." I said, "Yeah, this is it. This is everything I got. Guitar, amplifier, Navy sea bag, and a duffel bag. That's it." "Where are you going?" He said, I said, "I'm going to Vegas." "What you going there for?" I said, "I'm going there to be a star." "Really? You got connections?" I said, "No." He didn't talk to me for about 10 minutes. You think, I hope this guy in the car. I hope I haven't picked up my mental case. So I went to Vegas. That's another story that we can talk about on another podcast.
Absolutely.
You know, there's so much to talk about. It's not that I'm trying to hold anything back. I want you guys out there who are listening to be interested enough to see how this 82-year-old guy made it all this way. So those are all different stories that we can tell. But yes, I went to Vegas, and that's a whole other story. I left Vegas because this connection, whatever it is that I have, I call them my boys, okay? You whatever you call him, maybe it's God, maybe it's not. I don't know God. I don't, you know. First thing I know that if I want to find God, I got to get rid of him because he's not knowable, okay? So my boys came to me when I was in Vegas after 2 years, and they told me that they had something else for me to do.
Well, we're going to take a break for just a few minutes. And when we come back, I want to go a little bit more into that.
Okay.
Okay?
You're my leader. I'm the follower.
You're listening to Quite Honest with Sarah Bush and David Drapela. For more content, videos, and information, visit us on the web at aquietplace.net or go to our YouTube channel and subscribe and ring the bell for notifications. You can also find David Drapela and Sarah Bush on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and also visit Sarah at her current website, thecorefoundations.com.
My name is love. Just take my hand and you'll understand. My name is love.
I love that music. I thank you for that song. I think that that's a nice segue into the next conversation I want to have. But more importantly, I wanted people to hear on this podcast more of who you are in your message, and that song was perfect. So thank you. Thank you very much. So here's the segue. I want to have a conversation about the trauma that occurred when your wife died and how she died. But more importantly, you and I got into a conversation about what we learned from suicide that I want us to have a conversation about. So can you give a little bit of insight as to what happened?
Yeah, and I think since we both had traumas in our life with suicide, that's almost another podcast that we could talk about because, Sarah, we learned so much from that.
Yes.
There's no way that you can take this podcast and talk about the suicide and the depression of what you and I have been through.
Right.
And mix it in with the rest of this stuff. So I'll give you a brief outline, and then we'll save the rest if we want to have another podcast and talk about depression, suicide. I think that we could do that.
Absolutely.
No problem.
Absolutely.
Well, for me, once again, what I can tell you, and what I say to all the people that I know, that my life has been an absolute incredible miracle. It's unexplainable even to me as I look at it, but the story is that I was married and I came back to Texas, and I created about a $23 million estate. I owned hotels and apartment houses, which I built, and my wife was my personal secretary for 13 years. We were together 24 hours a day, 13 years. She was the most organized person I've ever had in my life, okay? And then it was always interesting. I remember the one hotel we had, we worked in all the hotels because I told her, we have to work in the hotel. If we're going to run a hotel, we got to work in it. Because when I first started building a hotel, she said, how are you going to build a hotel? You don't know nothing about it. I said, that's why I'm building it. Oh, David, she said, that's not right. And where are you going to get the money from? I said, that's a whole nother story that we can talk about on another podcast.
Absolutely.
Okay? So what happened, I remember, I have to tell the one story. I'm cleaning the bedroom up in one of my hotels, and my wife is cleaning the commode. And she stops and she looks at me and she said, honey, do you realize we own this hotel? And I'm cleaning the commode and you're dusting down furniture. Why are we doing this? I said, well, I know why I'm doing this. She said, well, I don't know why I'm doing this. I said, well, put your hands out. I said, let me see your hands. So she took her hands out. I said, how would you like to have a diamond ring on one or two of those fingers? She said, I would love it. I said, well, get back in the commode.
That's a good story. I like that.
It was a fun story. It's a fun story. I tell you, I got so many fun stories. So you have to imagine having a wife. First of all, getting along with yourself for 13 years is a trip in itself.
Day to day, getting along
Hello.
with yourself. Yeah.
But having a wife that you're with 24 hours a day for 13 years.
That's a lot.
Whew. So we were very close. I mean, she was. And to make the story short, that's a whole nother avenue that we can face. We got so many fun-packed podcasts that we can share. I mean, it's so much fun. We lost everything. I was the single largest shareholder in 3 banks in this town in Austin, Texas. And I went bankrupt for around $23 million. And my wife was from a poor farm in Georgia. And I went back to visit her folks, and they had dirt floors. But I got along good with them because I played the guitar and they played the fiddle. Okay? So you have to think like she thought. 20 years of a marriage, and I have all the commodes that I clean, everything that we have done is gone, David. I'm sitting at the table and I'm figuring I'm going into the quietness because I'm always looking for my boys to give me some direction, okay? they thought that I was in depression. I wasn't in depression. I was in a quiet place. She stopped at the table that I was working on. She said, "How do you do it?" I said, "How do I do what?" "How do you keep going, David? Don't you understand we have lost everything?" I said, "No, we haven't lost everything." "Yes, 20 years," she said. "We have no money. How are we going to pay for the house? We have lost everything. I cannot do that again." I said, "Well, how do you figure we lost everything?" I said, "Let me ask you a question. Do you love me?" She said, "Of course I love you." I said, "Well, that's what we had 20 years ago. The rest of this stuff was just material stuff that comes and goes, right? But if you love me, we can do it again." "Oh, I don't think I can, David." She said to me, "You are the most remarkable human being that I've ever known in my life, David." And she was going to the bedroom to put a pair of shorts on because I told her, "I'm going to take you out to get some ice cream." And that was the last words that she told me when I heard the gunfire. And I was stymied to start with. And I ran into the bedroom, and she had a hole in her head, and I was trying to breathe life into her through her mouth, thinking that I could save her some way with blood running out all over. So it was a traumatic thing. I mean, and you look at yourself and you wonder, I always, before I look at anybody else, I look at myself and wonder, what did I do or what did I didn't do that might have made this situation better? It's always a self-examination before I go to anybody else, because this is my life. So, depression, we can talk about that. Recognizing depression, how to come out of depression. Watching her being depressed, me not realizing only afterwards, like we do so many times in life. You know, I heard a thump. I ran over somebody. I didn't know that. I just heard a thump. Until you look back on it. So that was the end for me, and
I don't believe it was the end for you.
well, it was the end of that human relationship.
Yes.
With another human that had flesh on it. I still have the relationship. Love doesn't die.
No.
You know, I mean.
And her soul is definitely in you.
Yeah, that's right. I had fun with
Absolutely.
her all the time.
Absolutely.
You know, I tell her the other night, I told her, "You're taking up too much of the bid. Get the hell out go on the other side."
But I think that also, and we'll move on from this topic, but I think that what you and I have both experienced in our conversation is that everyone makes a choice about their life.
Right.
And the opportunity for me to have a better understanding of what we're trying to create with the quiet place is that place where people can come and find that space and time where the noise is not controlling their life, and that they are actually in a place where they can find themselves, find their balance,
Right.
and to have a better presence, not only to their own life, but to the people around them.
Right.
And for me, that's what I see is growing, that we're creating in a quiet place.
Right. I think that's right. That's
Yeah.
right, Sarah.
Yeah.
You know.
And so when we carry that just a little bit further into and again, it's going to be a whole different podcast of the near-death experience,
Yeah.
is the opportunity that you took me to, which was a meeting here in Austin that had to do with other people that had near-death experiences.
Yes, ma'am.
And for me, it was so opportunistic because here I work helping people with trauma, whether it's emotional, psychological, or physical, when I'm not so sure that my work is any different than the near-death experience of going through that experience and then having to come back into the everyday world and it be different. It just is different. Yeah.
And the truth is, we can have all the podcasts in the world, but we're never, ever going to be really able to say the truth about the near-death experience, because whatever we talk about, it's already filtered.
But I got to thinking about that the other day after we had our discussion about near-death experience, and it's almost to me like, and I know this is just a really strange analogy, but I'm going to have it anyway, is that first kiss where you feel all the electricity and you can't say to somebody else,
Right.
the energy that went down my kundalini was incredible. Most people aren't going to understand that, but the energy was there.
Right.
And so I really do understand, because what I tried to do was go into the quiet place and say, what is it about a near-death experience that is different? And I think that you're right in having been in that meeting that day, that no one talked about their experience except for how difficult it was once it was over with and they stepped back into life,
Right.
how difficult it was.
Right.
And I get that. And so I understand even better you saying, well, I don't know how to describe it. And I think that it would also take away from the spiritual essence of the experience if you could.
Because it's filtered reality.
Yeah. And that's hard for us to grasp, those of us that haven't been through it.
Just
But we're
grasp-
fascinated by it.
Right. But just grasping the difference between reality and false reality, that in itself, these are lessons that you and I can talk about, and the people who are listening to this podcast can maybe come to a grip. What is filtered reality? What does that really mean? What does reality really mean, These are really important things for people to hear so they can go inside themselves and distinguish what's happening in this world of duality that we live in.
I think that, David, what I've experienced in my 66 years is that most times everybody lives in a story. Everybody's got a story about their life instead of saying, here are the facts of my life.
Ain't we lucky? We get to tell our story.
Yeah, we are.
we get to tell our story and hope somebody listens to it. If they don't, we enjoy it anyway.
Absolutely. But there's a certain amount of wisdom. I was having a conversation with somebody today who went on that journey over in Europe that is many, many days long of where you're walking. And I said, when you came back from that, because she was gone 3 weeks, I said, when you came back from that, what did you glean from that? And she said, first off, it was the hardest thing I ever did. And she's 62. She said it was the hardest thing I ever did. I said, but what did you learn from that? And she said, I can't any longer be around the noise and feel fulfilled in a day. I have to have my quiet. I said, so what are you doing about that? And she said, well, right now I can't do that because, life has changed a little bit in their family and they have different responsibilities very early in the morning. And I said, but you can find that at night. You can find it even sitting in the bathroom, spending 5 or 10 minutes alone. Just getting to a place where you're away from everybody and nobody's taking from you, or you're not helping somebody else. You're finding nothing but yourself in that moment in time.
And this is great. This is great. What I say, the monk who sits in the monastery quiet all day finds the peace. I think about the guy in the shopping center with everything going on, but yet he finds a moment to find the peace. Who's holier?
That's an interesting question. That's interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way. Yeah.
The quietness is there. It's not the amount of time that you spend. It's the quality of the time that you spend inside that quiet place. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I learn from you every day, David. Trust me, I do.
Oh, my God.
So, when you talk about, or when you and I talk about the heart, for me, so many times when I work with people, they're so disconnected. They're more left brain. They're more in their head than they are in their heart. And then they want to know, why do I not have healthy relationships? Why is my job so hard? Why is life so hard? Why am I not, attracting the money that I want? Why am I not? Why am I not? Why am I not?
That's 5 more podcasts that you just went through right there, Sarah. Don't do that. I mean,
no, but I think it's an opportunity to really feed to the people that are listening to this, that those are the things that we're looking at.
Right.
Those are the things we want more feedback on,
Right.
as to whether or not that's of interest to anybody listening to this podcast.
Right.
But it's true. If we're going to find that place of peace and quiet, we have to be willing to look inside. It's our inner self that we have to work on. It's our inner self that we have to embrace. And that's still the heart. But so many times in our head, we don't have time. Our relationship doesn't allow that, or they don't understand me when I go there. Have you not been saying that?
It's like I wrote, Sarah, one must lose their mind to come to their senses. If you're going to find God and use your mind, you're on the wrong track, because you're never going to find him.
But to find your heart?
Ooh, now that's another podcast.
David, you are such a marketer. I like that. But
there is so much.
There's no question about that.
Oh, my God. We could talk on that. Just you and I can talk on that for hours.
Yes, we
Sarah.
can.
God.
But the real gift in all of this is to have people understand that that's what we're doing in this very first podcast.
Right.
We want to share the realities of where we want to go, what we want to talk about.
And where we've been and what we've learned.
It's called wisdom.
Right. This is not a storybook. This is.
Oh, I don't
this
know.
is
I
life.
think it is a storybook.
Well, this is a real life storybook.
Absolutely.
You are telling the book. They're not reading it.
Yeah. Over Christmas, we did puzzles. And one of the boxes that we pulled out had 300 pieces. But the real truth was it had 298 pieces. There were 2 pieces missing. 2 pieces. So you get all the way to the very end and you don't have 2 pieces. I even accused the dog of eating 2 pieces, but that's not what happened. And so I got to thinking about, over this past week, what is the analogy of the 2 pieces missing in the puzzle? And for me, when it comes down to taking a look at what I offer and what you offer to our participation in a quiet place, is that piece that's missing is not spelled P-I-E-C-E. It's spelled P-E-A-C-E.
You're right.
And that so many times in my work and in your work, people are looking for the pieces. And we've got 298 pieces all put together and everything looks great. And then we're missing the 2 that we think finish our work. And so we spend our lifetime looking for the 2 pieces. when it's within us all the time.
Right.
And so, I take a look at how we want to message what we're doing in a quiet place. And I think that part of it is no different than what we're doing right now. People want to be heard. People want to be seen as who they are and not having to fit to somebody else's expectations.
Well, that's true. Well, that's another podcast right there by itself.
Absolutely.
Oh, my God. We're going to be on here for, I don't know whether I'm going to live long enough to do all these podcasts.
You better. I enjoy this too much.
It's fun.
And so, what I think is so incredible about tonight in this whole podcast, this being our very first one, and we're going to learn and get better for each one that we do, is the importance of having people not only like us, but subscribe to us. And I'm hoping that they give us feedback.
This is right. In today's world, we need people who help us. Well, we always need people to help us. But in today's world, these podcasts and this work takes people to surround me. It takes money, it takes time, it takes effort. And without their support, without you subscribing, because when you subscribe, I don't know how these guys do it, but they put it somewhere, and then if you get enough subscriptions, and then if you get enough subscriptions, then you get advertising, and then you get so much money. And I don't know all about that, but all I know is they tell me, ask people to subscribe, David, because if we're going to last, if you're going to continue on, we got to have those people's help. And so ask them to subscribe. So I'm asking all of y'all, subscribe.
Well,
how do you subscribe? I think there's something down on the bottom of the thing that you press. Or...
Not only is the subscription on there, but so is every place that we're listed on the internet.
Okay.
Under A Quiet Place, and mine being the Core Foundations.
Right.
So the opportunity for both of us under A Quiet Place is to share what we want to share. But more importantly, through the podcast, I believe are just the tidbits of what we shared tonight so that we can expand that. And I think that by having people comment on what we've talked about that say, I want more of this or I want more of that.
Yeah, that's important.
Is an opportunity for us to really be more present and go deeper.
Yeah.
So today was just nothing more than showing you all the ingredients of who we are.
Right. It's not about us, it's about you out there. What is it? What can we do? What can we do to lend our hand? What can we do to open our heart up to you so that you can understand more of who you are and where we are in this world? We're about you. We're not about us.
Right. And if there's a specific issue,
declare
it. Bring it up.
We don't care what it is.
We'll take it on.
Yeah, and if we can't take it on, we'll forget about it.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to our podcast. It's been a joy, David Drapela. I'm Sarah Bush, and we just thank you for being with us in this wonderful opportunity. So, in close, I'm going to say to you, David, thank you for who you are in your heart. Thank you for loving me and loving the world as you do. So our time is up. Thank you for yours.
Same to you, Sarah Bush. Same to you.
Thank you.
For more content, videos, and information, visit us on the web at aquietplace.net or go to our YouTube channel and subscribe and ring the bell for notifications. You can also find David Drapela and Sarah Bush on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and also visit Sarah at her current website, thecorefoundations.com.